Do you feel like if this person walks away, something inside you would just shut down? Like the air, the ground, the meaning would all vanish? Then let me tell you something that maybe no one's had the courage to say to you yet. What you're calling love might just be an open wound screaming for attention. Sounds harsh, right? But it's real. Because when love hurts more than it heals, when the fear of losing someone is stronger than the joy of being with them, something's off. And it's not about them. It's about the way you learn to love. That feeling of, I can't live without them, isn't about their absence. It's about you not having found yourself outside of a relationship. The craziest part? The more you try to hold on, the faster love slips away. The more you erase yourself to keep someone, the more you lose who you are. And that turns into a cycle. Emotional hunger becomes attachment, attachment turns into fear, and fear becomes dependency. But there's a way out, and it starts exactly at the moment you begin to choose yourself. Want to know where that moment is? Stay with me till the end. If you feel like you're going to fall apart if that person leaves, that's not love. It's attachment, it's fear, it's a mistaken understanding of what it truly means to love. What you're feeling isn't something beautiful. You're reliving an old wound. Because real love doesn't drain you, doesn't put you on your knees, doesn't make you forget yourself just to keep someone close. And if it feels like you need the other person just to breathe, what you have is emotional dependency. It all starts way back with the people who raised you. When you were a baby, love meant needing someone to survive. But now, you're no longer that baby. The problem is your emotional mind stayed stuck in that same pattern. If this person leaves me, I'll die. And that's the root of romantic suffering. Replaying infantile love in an adult body, hoping someone else will fill a void that was never their responsibility to begin with. Want to break free? Start by admitting this. It's not mature love. Conscious love doesn't grow from emotional hunger. It grows from self-knowledge. Write that down. Stick it on your mirror if you have to. You don't need to be someone's half. You need to be whole. And being whole starts the moment you stop confusing yourself with those who leave and start recognizing who you are again. Because the emotional identity that sustains you can't be in the hands of someone who could walk away. Most people don't actually love. They relive trauma. They call it love, but it's really the desperation of not wanting to be left, the panic of being alone, the fleeting relief of feeling seen. But that's not love. It's emotional survival in disguise. A desperate attempt to fill what was missing back then. In those first relationships with the ones who should have cared for you, not hurt you. And until that pattern changes, the cycle of pain just keeps repeating. Once you realize this, something hits hard. What hurt wasn't the end of love. It was the end of the illusion. Because you were projecting onto someone else the responsibility of healing something they didn't even know existed inside you. You hoped for comfort and got rejection. You hoped for care and ended up with neediness. And your heart, it gets exhausted because love turns into a constant effort not to be abandoned. This lens needs to change. Love isn't a test of endurance. Love isn't about putting up with everything. Love isn't doing whatever it takes just to be chosen. That's not a healthy bond. That's emotional hunger. Start flipping the perspective. If loving someone is hurting this much, maybe what you need isn't more love from them. It's emotional development, it's autonomy, it's rebuilding your emotional identity. And that's a process more intimate than any relationship. You weren't born needy. You learned that love had to be earned, begged for, or deserved, because back then, the ones who were supposed to love you unconditionally gave you scraps or conditions. And that left a mark. The child you once were learned that love requires sacrifice, that you have to behave, please shrink yourself just to not lose affection. And the worst part? You grew up thinking that was normal. Those early relationships shape everything. When love comes wrapped in absence, abandonment, coldness, or control, your brain registers that as the foundation. And guess what? You'll end up feeling drawn to people who trigger the same kind of pain. Only now it looks like passion. It's unconscious, but it's brutal. And without realizing it, you become an adult trying to fix with your partner what should have been healed with your parents. But here's the thing, your partner isn't your therapist. No relationship will heal your childhood abandonment if you're not willing to face it. That hole can't be filled with kisses, it's filled with courage. Courage to remember, to feel, to process. If you're ready, write a letter to the child you once were. Say what they never got to hear. That alone is a beginning, a symbolic yet powerful step in your emotional growth. The beginning of life. You didn't know where you ended and where the other began. For a baby, the mother isn't someone. She's everything. She is food, warmth, safety, existence. There's no me in her. There's fusion. And that's why when something goes wrong in that bond, the pain is enormous. It's not just absence, it's a rupture of emotional existence. If that natural separation doesn't happen the right way, the emotional mind grows up confusing love with fusion. It starts to believe that loving means blending with the other, living through the other, losing the I to become us. And that's when the chaos begins. Because when you don't know who you are, you'll accept anything just to not be alone. After all, if the other leaves, what's left of you? That's why self-knowledge is so urgent. You need to separate emotionally, even if you've already grown up physically. Start here. Ask yourself what you like, not what you two like. What you think, not what he or she thinks. These are small exercises in emotional identity. Because if you don't recognize yourself, you'll keep looking for mirrors in other people. And when that mirror breaks, the pain turns into despair. It's hard to hear this, but you won't die if he or she leaves you. Will it hurt? Yes. Will it feel like the world lost its color? Maybe, but you'll survive. Because mature love understands the pain of loss without losing itself. It's immature love that implodes because it didn't live with the other, it lived through them. Mature love isn't free of emotion, it's free of illusion. It doesn't idealize, doesn't build unrealistic expectations, doesn't place the other in the role of a savior. It feels deeply, but without getting lost in the feeling. Ever seen someone begging to be loved? That's not romance, that's desperation. And emotional desperation doesn't build connection, it builds a cage. Want to break free? Start by asking yourself one simple, brutal question. If this person leaves me today, what's left of me? If the answer is nothing, then you have an urgent call. Take care of yourself. Strengthen your emotional autonomy. Nourish your identity. Invest in your emotional growth. Because loving someone should never mean abandoning yourself. Ever that you've already survived pains you swore you couldn't handle. You've cried until you were completely drained and still woke up the next day. So why do you now believe you won't survive this loss? Because the emotional mind creates catastrophes. It convinces you that the end of a relationship is the end of everything. But it's not. It's just the end of a chapter you may have idealized too much. Yes, it's going to hurt. Because you invested, you gave yourself, you bet your hopes. But emotional pain is not a death sentence. It's a separation process. And that process is what clears things out, gives new meaning, rebuilds. The difference is, when you have emotional autonomy, grief doesn't turn into self-abandonment. You feel the pain, but you don't fall apart. You cry, but you don't shatter into 1,000 pieces. Want a practical step? For 1 week, write down 3 things you did without that person. Even if they're small, having coffee alone, solving a problem, sleeping in peace. This reinforces a simple truth. You exist beyond this relationship. Because the moment you realize you can walk without emotional crutches, that's when you truly start heading toward healthy love. Some people love with the mind of a wounded child. They beg for attention, throw tantrums when they're not prioritized, and are terrified of being forgotten. But that's not love. It's a desperate attempt to heal the absence from the past. And the cruelest part? The adult truly believes they're loving, when in reality, they're just reliving emotional hunger disguised as passion. When you love in an immature way, everything becomes a crisis. Being late feels like disrespect. Needing space feels like abandonment. A misunderstood sentence becomes a war. Because love isn't experienced consciously. It's filtered through the dirty lens of unresolved emotional pain. And until that's seen for what it is, the relationship turns into a battlefield between what you desire and what you fear. So what changes the game? Emotional growth. You need to stop loving like someone begging for comfort and start loving like someone sharing presence. Conscious love requires maturity, knowing how to communicate, knowing how to hear no, respecting personal boundaries. And that only begins when you stop expecting the other to heal you and start being an adult with your own pain. Mature love doesn't cage you, it expands you. It doesn't suffocate, monitor, or demand that you shrink yourself to fit into someone else's world. Real love wants to see the other grow, not disappear. But if you still confuse presence with possession, care with control, and love with sacrifice, then what you're calling love is actually emotional dependency wearing a pretty name. Some people only feel safe when they're in control of their partner's life. They think love means checking in constantly, demanding passwords, time, attention, all the time. But that's not mature love. That's fear in disguise. And if that fear isn't faced, it poisons everything. Your emotional identity, your autonomy, your desire, even your self-esteem. Because no one can thrive in a space poisoned by insecurity. Want a quick reality check? Ask yourself, do I love this person, or do I only feel whole when they're around? If the answer is the second one, then it's time to rebuild. Healthy relationships are built between two whole people, not two halves desperately trying to complete each other. And that rebuilding, it always starts within you. Now tell me, how much longer are you going to keep calling something love when it's tearing you apart inside? How many more times will you dim your light just to keep someone else shining? Have you realized that deep down, you've been living not to be abandoned, instead of living to be yourself? It's time to stop begging for emotional crumbs, to look in the mirror and finally say, I'm worth more than this pain. Because yes, it is possible to experience love with freedom, with maturity, with awareness, but only after you place yourself at the center of your own life. So tell me, what's the first step you're going to take now? Drop it in the comments. What wound do you feel is still keeping you stuck in emotional dependency? Let's talk about it. And of course, if this content woke something up in you, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stick around. Because this is just the beginning of your emotional rebuilding, and you won't go through it alone.